Happy birthday, Craig. It's hard to believe that you're 50, but you'll always be 30 in my heart because I met you 20 years ago, unbelievably, 20 years ago. And I tried to remember the exact moment we met, and I don't, but I do remember some of the reactions we shared to various things, including the realization of where we were, that we weren't in Minnesota, we weren't in Tennessee, and we weren't in New York, but we were in central Pennsylvania where hunting season was king. And what I remember was the lounge in the philosophy department where some of the grad students had posted a scorecard between the deer and the hunters, because so many of the hunters would get drunk that some of them would inevitably be killed by each other. So somebody started a scorecard, deer versus humans. And we knew we weren't in Kansas either. Anyway, I remember when you lived at Emily Grossholtz's townhouse and the bear visited the garbage container. That was a very exciting Pennsylvania time. I remember watching Twin Peaks in your room, in the house that we shared, at a time when I had no TV. That was a different time. I remember especially, and I've mentioned this to you before, the cute little relationship that you had with Stella, because Cassie was the dominant cat of the two, and you had decided that your bedroom would be off limits for the cats so that you could have your friends in to stay who were allergic to cats. But Stella kind of convinced you that she needed a place at the fireside, so to speak, and you all developed this sweet little bond. I discovered that she was creeping into bed with you at night, and that was very cute. And she missed you a lot once we weren't roommates anymore. I remember especially that Easter that a bunch of your friends came over for brunch, and we made brunch in the big kitchen, and I remember Michael Davidovitz burning the potato latkes so that the whole kitchen filled up with smoke. But that you were very calm and just solved the problem, and we ate brunch out at the picnic table instead of inside. And I remember playing wiffle ball, and that was a great time for me, being included with your friends in that wonderful occasion. I remember our daily routines, and I remember our weekly routines. I remember how we'd get the New York Times on Sundays, and we'd kind of share the crossword puzzle. And we might work on it all week. It would sit on the kitchen table. And I remember the time that guy who was a prospective grad student at Penn State came from St. John's and stayed with us, and he irritated us both because he sat down on Sunday and just did the crossword puzzle in like 5-10 minutes and made us both feel stupid. But we decided that he was kind of that kind of person. I remember visiting you in Chelsea when you had the room just for the nights and not for the days, that odd brownstone in Chelsea where all the rooms were rented out double time. And I remember trying to follow you around New York City, trying to keep up with you with your long legs and your quick stride, and I was usually wearing some dumb shoes that weren't quite good enough for the city streets. But you would always, make sure you were showing me around and not let me get too far behind. And I remember when you found John, and John, was a much more of a walker like I was, and so that was great. And I remember when you started living on the west side and still wanted to have visitors. And I remember calling you after 9/11 and being so glad that you and John were both sort of okay as you could be after all of that. And I guess the main thing that I want to say about you is what a great friend you have been all of these years. One thing was that when my memoir came out, I'll never forget what you said about that. You had the best of all the comments that I ever got about it, which was, you said, I wish all of my friends would write memoirs because I really understand things now. And I've known you a long time, but now I understand some things that, I didn't know before. And I just loved that comment. You've always been funny and interesting and supportive, and you've always been there for me. and you've always appreciated me for my good qualities and forgiven me for my bad moments, of which I've had quite a few over the years. And mostly I've always thought that you were a better friend to me than I was to you, although being the person you are, you'd probably argue with that. But I do want you to know that I will always go to bat for you if the need arises. And I have a story I think I've never told you about a time after you'd moved to State College when you and John and Terry and Dawn were getting ready to have Silas, and maybe you'd already had him, and he was just a little baby. I know I hadn't met him yet. But this guy that I'd been out with a few times on a few dates came over to my place for dinner, and we were talking about parenthood because he was a parent, and I mentioned your situation, and he had a negative reaction to it, and he was like, "That's just not fair to children, you know, that's not fair to a kid to put him in an unusual social situation like that." And I said, well, there are all kinds of families, and people live in all kinds of different ways, and you know, many of them are fine. It's not, you know, the family is not one single kind of thing. And he said nobody could be a good parent and make a decision to bring a kid into an unusual situation like that. And I just got up and went over to my front door and opened it and said, "Bye, you're gone," because I would never ever have let him said anything like that about my friend Craig, who was the most wonderful person and one of the two most wonderful fathers, along with John, that I can imagine. Silas is a lucky kid. I'm lucky to have had you as a wonderful friend for so many years, and I hope that you have a great birthday this year and many, many happy returns. I love you. Bye.